My favorite thing growing up, man, this is a little weirdo. My favorite thing were tournaments and brackets. Yeah, no response is the appropriate response.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I am your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And welcome to our 350th episode. We started this show back in August of 2018, so this year makes our 7th anniversary of doing the show. We're entering our 8th year of doing it, and I don't know, it feels pretty good.
It's a long time.
It is. It is a very long time.
It's the longest time we've done anything. Well, other than be married.
Not to each other.
Right. We do have the same last name, I guess. Should clarify that. Hopefully you're not listening to our 350th episode as your first episode, but there's always a possibility.
Yeah, it is. Well, I've had jobs that I've had longer than this, but...
Oh, yeah.
Just
I've never been able to stay at a job for very long.
You're very much like my wife, who cannot stay with a job longer than 2 years. She's got to find something new.
I'm 4 years now. I've done 5 years before, but honestly, that first one, that was 5 years. Part of that I was in college, so I wasn't working every week. Every week for 5 years, I was like in school working, and then off during the summer, and then I had like a variety of different jobs within that same employer. So
yeah, it's funny when I think about us doing the show for 7 years, I'm kind of surprised that the number is only 350, but it does actually make sense because you can only do 52 episodes max unless you're doing more than one a week. But
yeah,
we don't for this. We have the bonus audio. We have just as many bonus episodes though as we do regular episodes. So that's fun. Even though the Patreon started in 2020? I think we waited a couple years to start that. So it's been, but I was also doing solo. I do solo stuff on there too. So that helps add to the numbers. But yeah, 7 years of doing the show, and quite literally has changed my life. We've talked about this before in other previous anniversary episodes where we go through the history of the show and what it led to. But yeah, starting this podcast led to me wanting to go back to school and changing careers into an entirely different industry. I work in television now, which might be a terrible time to be in that business industry. So maybe I made a terrible decision, but only time will tell. But I've been there for 2.5 years. So yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if television, not all broadcasting is going to go away,
Right.
You can move to other aspects of the broadcasting industry. Honestly, a lot of what you do translates probably pretty well to like the live capture side of things.
Yeah,
you can go work for news. You can go work for sports.
Yeah, those are the industries that they say are basically the only reason why cable's still around is because of live sports and news. So yeah, that's the field to be in. As far as everything else, well, I guess that's more the Hollywood side of things, not wanting to pay actors and writers to do anything and trying to replace everything with AI. Oof.
Production's picked up a little bit, I think, in LA, but not where it used to be. And I don't know that it ever will, but we're about to have the Olympics. So that's going to bring a lot of money into the city. It's going to bring a lot of problems. It's actually really not a good idea for us to have the Olympics, but
no,
they're going to do it anyway. But
yeah, I mean, we've doing the show, we've made friends that we never would have made otherwise, which is really great. That is genuinely the best part of the show, is just making the friends that we have had since starting it.
Yeah, it really is the friends you made along the way.
It legit is. It's a joke, but it's true. If we stopped the show now, it would have been worth it just for all of that. So yeah, not that we're gonna stop the show anytime soon. No plans on that. I don't know what would actually require us to not want to record anymore. We'd probably just reduce the amount of episodes we did a month before we would actually quit doing it. So
yeah, I don't see the point in not. I mean, unless it's just our listening just drops to absolutely nothing, right. Then it would be yeah, okay, what's the point of doing this? But
yeah, which has not been the case. We've been in doing the show where metrics have changed throughout the years, and they've changed how they determine metrics. I genuinely believe that the podcasting industry does not know how many people are actually listening. I don't think the technology is there to actually track it, and I think that's why the numbers change all the time. Because our numbers in our first two or 3 years were way higher than they are now, but that's because they changed how they recognize plays and downloads. So it's like those were fake numbers then, is what people think.
Because it's all still based on downloads, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like Spotify, you'll have streaming stats.
Right. You get it's
YouTube,
it's
you
weird.
probably get some streaming stats, but
yeah, you can get like
YouTube.
The service that we use, you could pay for more stats, but yeah. But I have noticed we have had an uptick in numbers recently because we have done an emphasis on bigger records, so that actually has helped us. So,
yeah,
we might have to go to a one for me, one for them kind of approach.
We're gonna start doing episodes that are like this underrated record, and it's London Calling by The Clash. You know, just gonna do the real obvious engagement bait of like, this is the most popular record of a subgenre, but we're presenting it as if no one's ever heard it.
Well, people of a certain age haven't heard a lot of that stuff. So I do feel like a lot of that, this thing is underrated, is just coming from young people who have no perspective.
You haven't heard it because you're 20 years old.
And none of your friend group has heard of The Clash. Yeah, I have been, we have been told by listeners, though, that they do like that we cover atypical records and we don't talk about the most talked about records. So I do think we need to keep that going as well, which, knowing us, we're going to pick that stuff,
It's a mix. Some years it's just we look at the charts and what came out and we're like, I don't like the popular records.
Right.
And I don't feel like doing an episode where I'm just dragging a record right now. I would rather just talk about something obscure that I do like. Yeah.
And we've gone back and forth between like guests. Like some years we had guests like every week. And then the other years we have, like this year, we've only probably had like 5 guests this year. So I think part of that is due to scheduling. It's just kind of tough to get people to be able to record during the daytime, which is when we record.
Yeah. Scheduling is the biggest issue.
Because we have these windows that we can only record during, and most of our guests can't do that. So, yeah, we need to get somebody it's either their day off or they work a night job to get them on the show. So, I like having guests on. It is fun. It provides a different perspective on records, and they choose stuff that we might not have chosen throughout the years, but it is tough. Those years where we were having guests on every single week were COVID years where most everybody was working at home or not working at all. So, there was a lot more free time for them. But yeah, 350 episodes, and for this episode, we're doing something special. We've done a few of these in the main feed before, but we did do them quite a bit on our Patreon. But since we shifted the Patreon to just basically doing the same gimmick every week, we now do a News of the World / I'm Listening every week, unless there's a week where you and I can't record together. And, I plug this now. All right, let's do the Patreon plug here. Let's do all that. So, patreon.com /punkautopod. For $1, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. And that includes all the back issues. All of those are there for people to listen to. But our weekly I'm Listening News of the World, where we talk about the news stories that happened over the last week and what we listened to. Don't know if we'll get one of those this week. Scheduling's kind of tough because this episode's going to take a while. And us flapping our gums at the top of the show isn't gonna help the timing on that. But this will be a longer episode, so not sure what we'll have on the Patreon this week. But if you missed it, you can go back and check out the brand new monthly series that I'm going to be doing with friend of the show, Dave Brown. And it's called Bookenders. And for our first episode, we talked about the band Two Cow Garage and their album 3. And the premise of that show is we just look at an album through the lens of its first and last song. So the idea is we'll talk about the first track, go all the way into the lyrics, the song itself. We'll do a little backstory on the band, and then we'll talk about the last track on there. And, does it succeed? Is this a successful, good ender for a record? Could a different song have worked better in its place? And then we'll talk about general feelings on the album as a whole. Really loved the first episode. It's going to be a once-a-month thing, because I think that's all that me and Dave can do. Extra, and I think we're going to throw those out there the same week that Dylan and I record the extra plays, our producer exclusive audio. So that way we have something on the $1 tier plus the $5 tier that same week. But I really loved the first episode. The feedback has been really good. Our next episode, I'm excited to do as well. And yeah, so there's all sorts of stuff there. I am still working on my 21st Century breakdown. That is the top 100 albums of the 21st century so far. I want to finish that before the year is up. I don't know if that's going to happen. It takes a lot to get notes down for those because I make myself listen to the album in full before I can record. So yeah, it's going to take a minute to get that series done, but I do plan on getting that one done as well. If you sign up at our $5 tier, that is our producer tier. That gives you a once a month exclusive bonus audio where we focus on an EP. And we currently have a poll up right now for people to vote in if you're a producer. So if you want to vote in this poll, we are actually have a 4-way tie in this poll right now. So we may have to enlist our designated tiebreaker to come and break this tie for us. But if you want to be the tiebreaker, and you sign up for that $5 tier, you can vote on the poll where next month we will talk about either The Clash's The Cost of Living EP from 1979, Black Flag's Six Pack EP from 1981, Babes in Toyland's To Mother EP from 1991, and The Falcons' God Don't Make No Trash from 2004. So if you want to be the tiebreaker, sign up for that $5 tier and you'll get the audio on that, plus all the past issues.
No pus. That's next month.
Yeah. And you can check out the newest episode where we did I Hate Myself's 4 songs. So, also as a producer, you get your name said on the show every single week. So shout out to our producers, Dave Brown, my co-host on Bookenders, as well as the writer of the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty. Shout out to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. Thank you to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. And thank you to Zach in Oregon. So if you want your name said, if you want to vote in a poll, and if you want that exclusive audio, sign up for that $5 tier. And we have our $10 tier where you get to choose the album we devote an entire episode to, and we have 2 of those coming up, so those will be fun once we get to them. Okay, Bracketology, it's time. We were requested this, to do another Bracketology, and specifically asked to do Asian Man records. And the way we decided to approach this was to pick, instead of doing albums, we went with bands, because on the Patreon for the Bracketology, we mostly did albums, but with this, we thought bands are probably better to do as far as giving us enough to talk about.
That's how we did the IRS bracket in the past, and how we did the ska bracket in the past.
Yeah, we did the Dad Rock bracket like that too.
So, yeah, I think it makes sense to just look at the bands overall.
Yeah. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we have 16 bands, all in head-to-head single elimination tournament style, and the way we're going to talk about these is we're going to talk about the bands in regards to the albums they released on Asian Man Records. So what a band did outside of Asian Man, I'm going to do my best to try and keep that out of my decision making. Like if a band is more known for their records they did on, say, Fat Wreck, I can't count those. I have to count the ones that are on Asian Man Records alone. So I have every record on this bracket of all of the albums that the artists released on Asian Man, which includes some of the bigger EPs, like the stuff that would be pressed on like 12-inch or like CD EPs, and I have some compilations as well. So we'll point those out as we get to them. But there are some bands on here that you're gonna be surprised at how we vote because, well, the 2 records they put out on Asian Man weren't their best. So the other one wins, that kind of stuff. So I think it'll reveal itself a little bit more as we're going, but I like this batch. We tried to come up with a good batch of bands to choose from. The seeding is randomly determined because we didn't really have a way to like rank them. I guess we theoretically could have gone with like number of releases on the label. That could have been our seeding. The artist with the most would be your number 1 seed, and the one with the least would be your number 16 seed. But we just did a random seed for this. It just felt a little bit more even. And the matchups are pretty good. As far as like first round matchups, they work pretty well. I mean, I guess we could talk about our feelings on Asian Man Records in general. I've been talking for a minute, so why don't you start us off there?
Yeah, Asian Man Records is, I think, one of the more consistently good punk labels. And I think that they're mostly associated with Mike Park. They're mostly associated with Mike Park bands, and they have kind of a ska label though they really aren't, when you look at the bands, a lot of the bands that we're going to talk about on this bracket, and you look at a lot of the bands throughout their history, they really aren't pigeonholed into one subgenre. It's not just a ska label. They are definitely one of the few labels that consistently did ska and have done ska records throughout the whole label's history. You know, there wasn't just like a cash in, or it wasn't just like, oh, you know, fat wreck bands with ska songs on their records, you know, like they had ska bands. They have had ska bands. But they've done a lot of things. They've done some folk punk. They've done a lot of emo, actually, and a lot of pop punk. There's a really good variety throughout Asian Man's discography, and they have a consistency to their ethic, the kinds of bands that they work with, the level of bands that they work with. There seems to be, I think there's a really good amount of promotion put into everything that Mike Park does with this label. If it's a one-man band, if it's a reissue, if it's a compilation, if it's, you know, whatever it is, you know, they give everybody equal treatment on the label. And I think that really shows throughout their discography. And it's why I think a lot of the bands that you have heard of, you know, you kind of know of every band that's on Asian Man. Certainly there are some bands that they were on other labels, and sometimes you kind of forget that they were on Asian Man at some point or another. But, you know, I think there's a lot of love for everyone on his discography. And it's an interesting label to look at. And they've been persistent and continued for a very long time and have not done anything weird. There's no weird accounting issues. There's no weird, there's no gross behavior from Mike Park. He's like one of the most nice, like honest people of all time. You know, it's everyone who's ever said anything about Mike Park has said only good things about him. Like, it's just a very, very, very respectable label, I think, in all regards. And I think one of the most important, most interesting punk labels of all time.
Yeah, formed by Mike Park, and it's a truly DIY operation. I think this is the example of DIY record label that should be followed. I guarantee you he was inspired by Discord Records to begin with, and Discord I think is also still worthy of, you know, aspiring to, but Discord also has been very successful as an independent in the sense that, like, they've sold a ton of records throughout the years, so they've almost elevated to a different level. Yeah, they're still very DIY and very independently spirited, but they got some money to move stuff around now. And Asian Man feels a little bit more like this is the label to model yourself after. I don't think he does contracts. I think everything is handshake agreements, and I believe it's all like one album deals. I think it's a case of he, you know, likes what he hears. He says, yeah, I'll do this record. And then the next time around, if you want to work with Mike again and offer him the record, he might take it. He might not. But there's no obligation to stay with the label if you don't want to. Like, one and done, some of those exist. There's a few on this bracket as well. Not a ton, but so
I think even a lot of the stuff that he might pass on, it's going to just be based on release schedules. You know, I think that's where people have just gone to other labels with records in the past, where it was like, we want to do this record, but what he's got money tied up in for stuff that, you know, he's waiting on copies to be pressed. If he doesn't feel like he can do it in a timely manner, like he'll just pass on it and be like, it's not going to work right now. You know, it's not a judgment call. It's just truly like, I only can do so many records at a time and want to give everything its fair attention.
Yeah, I bet very rarely if he puts something out by an artist, I bet he's probably not passed anything up based on sales. So like, oh, well, your last record didn't sell that many copies. If he likes it, I think he's going to put it out. He also does low print runs on some stuff too. So there's not as much, you know, money in it. You know, it's easier to move 300 copies of a record of a band that people don't really know that well than to do like, you know, 500 to 700,000 copies. He's done records where he's repressed them numerous times throughout the years, but I don't think the size of the band matters to him. So that's pretty cool too. You know, he just puts out what he likes. And in some instances, like his new model that he's done for a few years now is to like find a songwriter who like sends him demos usually, and then build a band around them, which he's done that with Teens in Trouble. He's done that with, I'm blanking on who else he's done that with. He did that with Kitty Cat Fan Club. He did that with Pacing.
Pacing seems a little similar.
Yeah. So, which is cool. He's just like, he thinks the songs are good, and maybe he doesn't want to put out acoustic records, but he has done that too in the past. But yeah, I think it's a case of just him being like, I could put a band together for you if you want to do that. And usually it's some pretty impressive musicians that he gets to, be on the records. So the Asian Man family tree is pretty large, and you see a lot of people show up numerous times throughout. We'll see quite a few of them show up on this bracket as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Asian Man Records. I don't love every single record they put out, but I do give everything a chance, and I'm always excited to see. And it's not a case of a label that's like, oh, I used to love them, but then they put out like 4 years worth of records I don't like. Like, I won't name labels, but there are labels that I followed that I used to love that shifted the type of music they put out. And
yeah. Asian Man doesn't follow trends.
No.
Like, I think there's a couple of, like, people like Pacing, Teens in Trouble, like, those bands right now, like, they have a following, and I think they appeal to a lot of indie, power pop, punk kids right now, but they're not, for one, I don't think those are, like, trendy artists. I think those are artists that would be making music like that, regardless of its popularity. And two, they also seem like the kind of thing that Asian Man Records puts out. They just seem like the kinds of things that Mike Park likes. They don't. Mike and Asian Man Records don't follow trends. There's not gonna be a new gaze band.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense for that label.
Yeah, like, I can't think of, like, very many post-punk bands that have ever been on Asian Man Records, if any. I mean, there might have been something, but it's not a thing he goes after. He doesn't chase that kind of stuff. So you don't see a ton of garage bands when that was, like, a really popular style at the time. Like, occasionally you get one or two, but yeah, he just puts out what he likes, which is good. It's what you want from a label. Still does it out of his parents' garage. It's very fun. I love it. It's a great label, and he seems like a really good person. So yeah, I'm very happy to do this bracket. Well, let's get into it. So we have a bunch of head-to-heads here, and you've actually seen the brackets this time. On the Patreon, I was not sharing the brackets, but since this is a little bit more of a prepared episode in the sense that we have actual notes instead of just winging it like we do on the Patreon brackets, so you got to prepare a little bit. So looking at it, I'm pretty happy with these head-to-heads. I think this is how a first round should look as far as what type of bands would go head-to-head against each other, so I think that's pretty good. And honestly, there's really only one that I'm like, man, that's not, maybe two, but two maybe that are like, we're going to be tough. So we'll have to dig into this one. But let's do it. Let's start with our number one head-to-head, and it is the number 1 seed Alkaline Trio up against the number 16 seed Smoking Popes.
Curving your clavicle, kissing your clavicle.
All right, some stats on the bands. Alkaline Trio from Chicago, Illinois. They formed in 1996. They were primarily centered around singer and guitarist Matt Skiba and bassist and singer Dan Adriano. They are the most consistent members of the band. They have had at least 4 drummers throughout the years. And Skiba initially formed this band with a different bassist and drummer Glenn Porter. Dan Adriano from Tuesday and Slapstick was brought in to play bass in 1997, and he has not left yet. Both Matt Skiba and Dan Adriano have released solo albums on Asian Man Records. We thought about including some of these solo artists, but we also said that if the solo artist's band put records out on Asian Man, then we'll put the band, and not so much the solo artist. I don't know how you feel about the idea of considering the solo records, or if you're going to try and keep them out of your voting or not.
I will keep them out.
Okay, that's fair.
Depending, I mean, well, I guess it depends on the band, but I think with the case of like Alkaline Trio, that's a band that is its own thing. And the things that they do solo aren't really very representative of what the band does. There's similarities, but I think the solo material that both of those guys have done outside of Alkaline Trio is far enough away from what they do as a band that I think I would keep them separate.
Yeah. So Alkaline Trio joined the label pretty much immediately into their career. They basically they did like one thing prior to being on Asian Man, and then they did we're on it by like the next EP. So they did a lot with Asian Man early, and then they would leave for Vagrant, and then they would also go on to a major label later. They have 10 studio albums total. They are still an active band today. Matt Skiba also played in Blink-182 for a couple of years there and recorded 2 records with them. But we're only concerned with the records that were released on Asian Man Records. So that includes 1998's Goddamnit, their debut full-length, the I Lied My Face Off EP in 1999, their second LP, Maybe I'll Catch Fire, in 2000, and the EP compilation, the self-titled Alkaline Trio, from 2000 as well. So thoughts on Alkaline Trio. What do you feel about this band?
A great band up to a point. A very important band for me historically. Looking at their experience on Asian Man, the stuff that they put out on Asian Man, a very solid band. They left before some of my favorite stuff and some of their most important stuff and commercially successful records, definitely. But that being said, Goddamnit, as far as studio albums, Goddamnit, Maybe I'll Catch Fire, those are great. Those are excellent. And that Alkaline Trio comp is good too. Like, I think that's... Asian Man makes such a great case for compilations.
They do them so well. And they actually make them feel important.
Yeah.
Like, this Alkaline Trio comp is viewed by a lot of people as basically another record, another album.
Yeah.
That tells you how strong they were early on, like how all their early EPs were, how good those were. But yeah, Asian Man does a good job with compilations. I'd say like half the bands we're talking about have a comp on there that's really good, even if they didn't put out the record, the EPs that were originally on it.
Yeah, that I think counting the compilations is fair too. Like, even though it's material that might not have been released on Asian Man before, the way that he's done it, of just being like, I'm going to package these things together and make them accessible. And that becomes part of their discography on the label. And I feel like he stands by that material as if he had put it out the first time himself, And I feel like it's more than just a cash grab. It's more than just a double dip for the artist. I think almost every Asian Man compilation, like artist-specific compilation, is an album in its own right. I think just because of the way that it was packaged together and marketed and really was pushed as well as any other LP. So that's a very good batch there. Goddamnit's a top 5 easily Alkaline Trio record. Probably a top 3 record for me. Possibly a top 2 record.
Yeah,
might be my second favorite Alkaline Trio record.
Yeah, I think most people are in agreement with that the first 4 Alkaline Trio records are probably their strongest. And I'm probably torn between Maybe I'll Catch Fire and From Here to Infirmary as my favorite Alkaline Trio records. I think it depends on the day, really, and how recent I've heard the record. Whether it's not, it's my favorite. But Goddamnit is like, that's a high watermark. It kind of set the tone for a lot of bands during that time period. That is the record that so many Alkaline Trio fans consider their best. It's probably sold the most copies just through various represses throughout the years. I mean, maybe some of that major label stuff sold more in units, but didn't have the longevity as far as Goddamnit has. Like, that's a legendary record. Probably, honestly, looking at everything on this label, one of the most important albums in the label's history. I imagine that Alkaline Trio's Goddamnit has funded plenty of records going forward. And who knows if the label would have made as long as it has without those first 2 Alkaline Trio records. So, very important band in the history of the label, as we'll see throughout the rest of the brackets, especially the musicians, Skiba and Dan Adriano. They will pop up many more times as we're talking. But let's talk about the Smoking Popes.
That our future brings. In an age of evil queens and kings, hope is burning in the song we sing. The song we sing. I don't wanna simmer down. I don't wanna simmer down. I don't wanna simmer down. Oh.
They also are from Chicago, Illinois. They play, I don't know what you would call this, college rock punk. It has a very college rock, early 90s alternative, early 90s indie rock feel to it, but still kind of steeped in punk music. They already had a fairly long career by the time they joined Asian Man Records. They were on a major label in the early 90s, and they had even broken up by 1999, started a new band called Duval, and reformed, all before they joined Asian Man Records. They would then leave Asian Man for Anxious and Angry, which is their most recent record, and they've only released 3 albums on Asian Man. It's Been a Long Day in 2010, This Is Only a Test in 2011, and Into the Agony in 2018. So, this is interesting. It's the Chicago bands going head-to-head with each other. What are your feelings on the Smoking Popes?
The Smoking Popes are a band that I have never really connected with very deeply. I've heard a lot of their stuff throughout their career, and it's fine. Like, I don't really have anything against them. It's funny you called them college rock, college punk. I see that college rock influence for sure. I would call them your first job after college rock. They're not one of my favorite bands, and they're not a band I've really felt like spending a ton of time with. I would even hazard to guess this is not their best material. I'm not super familiar with it. It's not really a very notable period of their career. I could be wrong. There could be people, hardcore Smoking Popes fans, could love it, but it just doesn't seem like it's as well regarded, not as popular. It doesn't stand out as much to me as the earlier stuff I have heard, so that I've spent more time with.
I've spent a little time with the Smoking Popes lately. It's more recent that I've kind of gotten into them. Our buddy Steve, he sponsored an episode where we talked about their first record, Get Fired? It's what he named his band after. And I enjoyed talking about that record on that episode. And then I've listened to Born to Quit. I think I've heard some more of the 90s material. And the newest record, which I actually do enjoy quite a bit. I like their style. It is very much a mid-tempo kind of style of punk. It's not super fast-paced. I could see an argument where people would not consider it a punk band. I don't think that's fair. I do think they are still a punk band. I think that's more of an attitude and approach to music so much than like their style. They are closely tied to Alkaline Trio as well. Dan Andriano has played in the Smoking Popes. I don't think on any records. I think it might have just been filling in live. I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Andriano and Alkaline Trio are responsible for Smoking Popes as signing to Asian Man after their reunion. And I haven't heard these 3 albums they've done on the label in full. I did sample quite a bit from all 3 of these records, so I have a very strong feeling about what they sound like, and they are a consistent band. I think from beginning to end in their discography, they have kind of maintained a very similar sound and style of songwriting. So, actually, I need to correct myself. One of these records is not an LP. It is a compilation, and that is, let me get that correct. It's Been a Long Day as a compilation. That's their 2010, which was their first thing they did. So the first thing he did was a comp for the label. So the 2011 record, This Is Only a Test, and Into the Agony are the only LPs that have actually come out. But I think it's fine to count It's Been a Long Day on here as well. All right, well, the time of voting is upon us. So, who are you voting for, Alkaline Trio or the Smoking Popes?
I'm gonna go with Alkaline Trio. Kind of an unfair head-to-head. There's a couple bands on here that I think are gonna be hard to beat. So Alkaline Trio, nobody really had a very high chance
Right.
in that head-to-head.
Yes, I will be voting for Alkaline Trio as well. I think what we should also be considering when we vote on this is the importance of a band on the label as well. And I, like we just said, with Goddamnit probably being one of the most important LPs that the label ever put out. That's tough to beat. That is really hard to beat. And then the involvement of Matt Skiba and Dan Andriano throughout the history of Asian Man should be, considered. Yeah, Smoky Popes are, very honorable entries onto this list, but it's not even their most well-known material. It's just kind of viewed as their post-reunion material, and you're right, I don't know what people think of those records. I do think they are consistently well-regarded, but not to the degree of those first, 3 or 4 records they put out. So, yeah, it makes sense. Alkaline Trio moves on to the next round. All right, our next head-to-head, it is the number 8 seed Tuesday up against the number 9 seed Spraynard.
I got a few things that I didn't think about until after you were gone. Please come home. Please come home. We said goodbye and now a feeling that I've never felt keeps me alone. This morning I was thinking about our summertime, 99% of our time. When I thought we could do it again this summertime. Drinking your roof day after the sunrise. Summertime, 99% of our time away. You did it.
And let's start off with some Tuesday stats. So, also from Chicago, Illinois. I think half the bands on this bracket are from Chicago. So it's very funny that it's a very Cali label and a very Chicago label. But Tuesday from, like I said, Chicago. They are part of the Slapstick family tree, along with some other artists on this bracket. Dan Andriano would later go on to play in Alkaline Trio, and he is the singer of Tuesday. This band was very short-lived. They didn't release a ton of material. And a majority of everything they put out was on Asian Man Records. So they put out Freewheelin in 1997, their lone LP, and their EP Early Summer, which is also released in 1997. The only other thing they have is a demo that was put out on a different label, I believe a Chicago label. So that is their full catalog. Not a ton there. But what are your thoughts on Tuesday?
It's Tuesday, baby.
Tuesday Daisy.
Tuesday, in it.
Tuesday, be lovers. All right, we're just doing TikTok quotes
We're
now.
just doing Ricky Gage's bit. That's all he does. It's great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
What do they call those? They used to call them single serving tumblers is what they used to be called. But
He does the one thing every week. Tuesday is great. Everything's good. They were too short-lived, I think, to become a bad band. It's really frustrating because I wish there was more Tuesday, but I would also not trade Tuesday for those first 4 Alkaline Trio LPs. So it's kind of like, well, we gotta let this one go to get Alkaline Trio, And I think even if Alkaline Trio had not had Dan in it, they would have been a good band. Matt was really good then.
yeah.
That would not necessarily hold up.
He can sometimes pull it out and give you a good song, but
It's so much more rare now.
it's very rare now, especially this newer material that's come out in the last few years. But Dan is stronger still, but yeah.
So I really like Tuesday. There's just not a whole lot there.
Yeah, same. I love Tuesday. We did an episode on Freewheelin, so I didn't look up the number, but if you search for it in your podcast app of choice, you'll probably pop up pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, Freewheelin is a great record. It is. I wish we did get more Tuesday. I'm with you on that. I doubt we'll ever get more Tuesday. Every time Dan has done something outside of Alkaline Trio since Tuesday called it quits, it's usually been a solo record or, him working with other musicians that he hasn't worked with in the past. It'd be cool to one day to see Dan try and tackle this style of songwriting again, because I'd say Tuesday is probably more emo-tinged than Alkaline Trio was. Though there's a case to be made to calling Alkaline Trio an emo band. But Yeah, Tuesday always felt a little different from Alkaline Trio. Not as crunchy, not as loud, but a little bit more melodic, which that is band's kind of style in general. But yeah, phenomenal record, and such a short-lived band that, yeah, it's tough to talk about them because there's not that much really there to talk about. But it's kind of fitting because the band they're going up against only released one album on Asian Man Records as well. So that is Spraynard.
I'm feeling stagnant. I'm spreading myself thin. My reaction to everything around me changing. Bury myself inside my head and inside my mind. And I'll be lucky if I make it out alive. I turned to an old friend to see what he thought of the thoughts I've been thinking lately. His words from my nerves in the dirt, the urgency in his voice. With the blink of an eye, we'll be waiting to die in retirement home in Florida. Let's get out of bed, even when we don't wanna. Like gravity, we keep on pulling ourselves down. We're waiting for something better. We can just let it back up ourselves. Taking every ounce of daylight, stay up every second of nighttime. The only thing we'll regret's not knowing what regret feels like.
And they're from Westchester, Pennsylvania. They formed in 2008, and they play a Latterman-style orgcore pop punk with a little bit of Blink-182 in there as well. This one's fun because this is from a completely different scene. Spraynard is from the Northeast, late 2000s, early 2010s, post-Latterman, also a little bit of the emo revival boom. Spraynard was always played with a lot of those emo revival bands, but they weren't necessarily an emo revival band. But they're in that same scene. They were doing a little bit more of the Long Island sound, despite being from Pennsylvania. Though I don't know how far Westchester is from New York. It could be one of those closer cities, but they came to the label via Runner Records and their first record, Cut and Paste. And they are essentially a one-and-done band. They did one album on there, and then I don't remember, did they break up and then get back together and then join Jade Tree, or did they break up after Jade Tree? I can't remember. I think it was a breakup record for Jade Tree, break up again situation. But they released Funtitled in 2011. They released the Exton Square EP in 2012 and the Mark, Tom, and Patrick Show compilation in 2014. So it's a very similar case to be made for Spraynard as well as Tuesday. So I'm kind of glad that they are going up against each other.
Yeah. Spraynard, it's weird that they were on Asian Man, because really I don't associate them with Asian Man at this time period. It's kind of like, you kind of forget how active Asian Man was at this time. But that's their biggest record is on Asian Man.
I wonder if
you could argue that Mabel is a bigger record.
Yeah, but nobody really...
Technically speaking, but...
People don't like it the same way,
it's
though.
Not as important.
And I do think they had broken up before they got back together and did that one for Jade Tree. Because that was part of the thing that was supposed to, like, oh, Jade Tree's back. And, like, they chose weird records to come back with. Mabel, that Dark Blue record, that Dogs on Acid record, and then I think they were dead after that again. It's kind of funny. I think they're just a reissue label now at this point. I wonder if the reason why they put this one out on Asian Man is purely because the band is a fan of the label.
That's possible. I mean...
And Mike liked it, of course.
It depends on who they knew that had connections, who they would have played with. They probably played in that area, too. And it's possible Mike just saw them and was like, hey, you guys are good. I'll put out your next record. And yeah, it could have just been that simple. But, like, it's just funny. Yeah, you don't think of them being a Philly area band at that time period where everything was Philly.
Yeah, it really was. Like,
the Philly emo scene. And, like, I mean, it wasn't strictly Philly. There was a lot of Connecticut stuff going on, too. There was New York City stuff going on, too. But Philly was kind of like the center of it, the middle point. And, like, everybody was moving to Philly because it was cheaper.
I bet it's not cheaper anymore, and that's probably why Philly has kind of died down as, like, a source for that kind of stuff.
Philly is still kind of cheap, actually. For a major city, for as big as it is, it's pretty cheap. I mean,
regionally, yeah, comparably to Brooklyn and Boston, yeah, it's probably still cheaper, but it doesn't seem like Philly is as big a scene as it used to be.
Philly is also easy to get around. It's one of the more public transit, walkable kind of cities with cool stuff happening. I see the appeal of Philly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that time period, like I always forget. Spraynard is like one of the biggest examples of a band that I forget was on Asian Man.
Yeah.
Because that time period, I just wouldn't have thought of them as an Asian Man band. And they're not too different from another band that's on here that I do think of as being on Asian Man. So, but I also, though, never really fully got into Spraynard, which probably plays into me not thinking of them as an Asian Man band. And so I'm not super invested in them.
I was super invested in them. I really loved this record when it came out. I still don't think of them as an Asian Man band, though. Like, funnily, I think of them as like a Square of Opposition band, despite they only did like some EPs and splits on that label. But I still associate them with that scene. Square of Opposition is from Philly, too. That's part of why I think I associate them. But
Square of Opposition was from Lehigh Valley, wasn't it?
Oh, right. Not Philadelphia. Yeah, Lehigh Valley. Yeah. But still Pennsylvania. I don't know how far that is from Philly, but probably not too far. I could be wrong. Like, I thought, like, it could be completely closer to Pittsburgh for all I know, but...
Lehigh is like Allentown. It's north.
Yeah.
North of Philly. Not super far. It's not like as far as Pittsburgh is.
So yeah, I was super into the band. I loved this record. It was probably my favorite record the year it came out. I think there is a case to be made that I burned myself out on them. I listened to them a lot for an extended period of time. There's a lot of records from that very specific time period that I listened to so much that I don't really want to hear very often anymore. So Funtitled was a record that I absorbed and just ate up, and I saw them live a couple times following this record, and yeah, I've enjoyed the band for a long time, but they broke up and then they stopped being as present in mind. They would go on to form, Pat would go on to form Big Nothing, which is a great band. I think you actually like Big Nothing more than you like Spraynard. Understandable though. That's kind of more in line with your taste in general. But yeah, Pat's a great singer, songwriter. There's two Pats in the band, but yeah. Well, let's vote. Where are you going? Tuesday or Spraynard?
For me, it's Tuesday.
For me, it's Tuesday as well. I do. If you just put Freewheelin up against Funtitled, I'm probably going with Freewheelin in most 9 times out of 10. So I also think that Tuesday is a little more important to the label than Spraynard is. Because like you said, and I said, you don't think of Spraynard as an Asian Man band. And I do think of Tuesday as an Asian Man band. So it makes sense. I don't even know if that record's been repressed on Asian Man, but I know Freewheelin's been repressed a bunch of times. So kind of gives you an idea. All right, let's go to our next head-to-head. It is the number 4 seed Kepi Ghoulie up against the number 13 seed Emu 330.
What's my name? How long have I been here? Won't you stay? Why are you acting weird? Well, of course you left a picture just to rub it in. Well, I can't take this no longer. Just put me in the bin. Bye-bye brain. So long sanity. Everything went away when she left me. Well, I can't think since this morning. My head is acting strange, and it's all one little thing. Bye-bye brain. Am I dumb?
To me, this is the hardest head-to-head, but we'll get into it. Some stats first. Kepi Ghoulie from Sacramento, California. Kepi was the lead singer and guitarist of the band The Groovy Ghoulies. And following their breakup, Kepi began releasing solo albums. So much to the point that I believe there are more Kepi solo records than there are Groovy Ghoulies albums at this point, including Groovy Ghoulies albums that he re-recorded as Kepi Ghoulie albums. I think that's an ownership thing. I think he didn't own some of those records, so he was just like, well, I'll re-record them. Kepi plays bubblegum pop punk in that Ramones core variety. He joined Asian Man Records via some self-released records, and he is one of the most prolific artists on this entire bracket. He has at least 15 full lengths under his name as a solo artist, including probably like 10 Groovy Ghoulies albums. He has collaborated with other bands as well as other musicians. He most notably has done some stuff with the bands The Accelerators and the Copyrights. And he also does lots of covers records, including covering Groovy Ghoulie songs. He eventually leaves Asian Man Records to go release albums on Eccentric Pop Records. He is their biggest artist on that label. Still very, very active today. And on Asian Man Records, he released Hanging Out in 2008, American Gothic, also in 2008. This is basically a double album. One's more acoustic, one's more electric. He did the album with Vic Ruggiero, who is... What band is he? Is he the Toasters guy? I should have looked that up beforehand, but...
The Slackers.
Slackers. I get them mixed up. That album's called The New Dark Ages in 2009. He did Life Sentence in 2009 as well. I Bleed Rock and Roll in 2011, and Kepi for Kids in 2012, which was part of the, I think it's called like Fun Records, and it's the label that Mike Park started to release children's music on, because Mike did a solo children's record on that too. So, Kepi for Kids, that makes a lot of sense. You could play most of the Groovy Ghoulies catalog for Kepi, and the kids would love it. Thoughts on Kepi?
I like Kepi. He's a lot of fun. I like the Groovy Ghoulies. There's a lot of material. I can't say I've absorbed all of it. I
loved all of it? No. I've heard all of it, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like if we're judging by Kepi Ghoulie's entire career output, which we're not, but hypothetically if we were, it's so much of the same thing to probably diminishing returns.
That is some 12 Angry Men type logic that you use there. The, how can you disregard something you've heard? You can't.
It's a sneaky lawyer's trick I'm doing. But if we're looking at his output on Asian Man, that's a very strong period of his career. And it's probably the period outside of like the classic Ghoulie stuff, Groovy Ghoulie stuff. It's the Kepi material I'm most familiar with, to a point. I can't say I've really listened to the Vic Ruggiero.
No, I never listened. I maybe have heard it, but I don't think so.
But it's a pretty good run on the label. And a very worthwhile one. So, overall, I'll go ahead and say I doubt Kepi's gonna win the whole bracket. But in this round, we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny. Looking at Kepi's solo material, I agree. This is his strongest material. You know, Hanging Out and American Gothic and Life Sentence and I Bleed Rock and Roll, those are some of his best solo records. Because everything he did after, like, he did a lot of covers after. You know, he did the Kepi Goes Country. He re-recorded Fun in the Dark. He re-recorded Reanimation Festival. He did the Ramones cover album. In the same year, he did another cover album of just all covers. I think Lost in Love in It is like his only like original LP. He did another record with Vic Ruggiero in 2021 as well called After the Flood. But as far as like just Kepi, I think he's only done one album of original material. And even then, there might even be some replays on that record if I look at it. But yeah, this is like his best run of stuff. And it's the stuff I love the most from him, besides a handful of Groovy Ghoulies albums. I do think Kepi is a little more consistent as a solo artist than the Ghoulies were, because those first couple Ghoulies records are really rough, but that's just low budget, and when they recorded, you know, late 80s, early 90s. He hits a stride in the mid-90s with that band, but yeah, very strong time period for Kepi on the label. On the flip side, we have Emu 330. So they were from St. Louis, Missouri. They formed in 1988, so he's one of the older bands on our list. They play what they call psycho ska, which no one really knows what that means. It's just third wave ska, but with their particular brand of chaos, I think is how I would describe it. They have they're the proto Bomb the Music Industry in the sense of they also were a very chaotic band. They joined Asian Man Records via Dill Records, which was Mike Park's label prior to Asian Man, while he was still in Skank and Pickle. You unmuted. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I was going to say Bomb the Music Industry very much took MU330's shtick, and that is funny because he then also took the guy from MU330,
Yeah.
put him in his band.
Yeah.
He loves to do that. I'm going to do what other people are doing and bring those people into my band. So at least he's paying them, so he's not just ripping their ideas off.
You know, that's not the worst idea, too. Like, if you want to do a thing like that another band is famous for doing, if you get the guy who did it in your band, then are you really ripping them off?
Yeah.
You actually brought the person in.
You're going to get a lot closer to what you're trying to do anyway.
Yeah. Which makes sense. Like, I want to do this kind of thing. Well, can I just get the guy to come do it with me? If they're available.
Can I get Bruce Springsteen? I mean, everybody does.
I mean, yeah, people can
Everybody
get Bruce.
has been getting him to do a song.
He's accessible, strangely, for such a massive artist.
I mean, those are major label artists also, but
Yeah.
he's
MU330
not gonna
released.
He's not going to record a guest vocal for my 7 monthly listeners.
MU330 released 7 studio albums, with their most recent being in 2002. They never really broke up, though. They've gone very long periods where they don't play any shows, but they do occasionally play some stuff. Usually festivals, sometimes international. Man, I'd love to see MU330. I wish one of these festivals that we consider going to would get them. Did they play Supernova? I bet they did. That just happened this past weekend. But that might be the only way to see them for us. And their lead singer, Dan Podhas, has also released several solo records on Asian Man. There's at least 5 or 6 albums. And then he's gone to other labels too. But as far as MU330's Asian Man output, it consists of Crab Rangoon from 1997, Winter Wonderland, their Christmas album from 1999, their self-titled record, also from 1999, Oh Yeah, their live album from 2001, and Ultra Panic in 2002. We are very vocal MU330 fans on this podcast. We talk about them. They're not one that I don't think we over talk about. I think we talk about them when they show up in places, but anytime we do ska, MU330 does tend to come up as a subject. So this is the hardest head-to-head to me.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough one because it's great runs for both bands. That's a pretty unimpeachable run for MU330. I mean, that's honest. Like it would be even better in my eyes if they had started with Chumps on Parade.
I will say this: Chumps on Parade was reissued on. I think Chumps on Parade came out on Dill, and I think it got reissued like a year later. Mike would do that at that time when he was shifting from Dill to Asian Man. He basically just reissued all of his previous records on Asian Man. So, and Press has been reissued on the label as well. So everything that MU330 has been released has come out on Asian Man via original or repress.
Yeah. So if you want to blur the lines a little bit, it does kind of cover the entire MU330 discography, which it doesn't start great, but I think Chumps on Parade is a great record. It's not as good as Crab Rangoon, but
I think it's a great flawed record, but yeah.
But even just if you're just going by strictly what came out on Asian Man record, that's great. That's a great run.
Yeah.
That's so much good material. Really slept on.
I was kind of under the impression for years that MU330 were one of the more popular ska bands, and then we figured out doing it, it's like they're not really thought of that way.
Yeah, they're kind of weirdly not very popular.
They're very underrated, it feels like. Well, the people who listen to them love them and highly rate their stuff, but yeah, it feels like they're not as thought of in the third wave, pantheon.
Yeah. Well, let's define our terms, gentlemen. Are we discussing redistricting or reapportioning? We always quibble over what define. We always correct ourselves when we say underrated. That term has been so poisoned.
Yeah, underrated can include underlistened as well. We've defined that ourselves, so I guess underrated does work. But I feel like we're not being like, wow, My Bloody Valentine sure is underrated. No, they're not. They're really not.
I listen to bands you've never heard of, like Radiohead.
Yeah.
If we're voting,
Yeah, let's vote.
I'm going to go with MU330. I think that's a better run.
Yeah, this was the hardest head-to-head to me, but our Crab Rangoon is my favorite MU330 album. And it honestly is one of my favorite albums, period. So, yeah. MU330 is moving on. All right, our next head-to-head is the number 5 seed Shinobu up against the number 12 seed the Broadways.
I met the devil in the woods in the outskirts of town. The mayor stood right alongside. And the next day, a man died in the dust of our streets as we just stood by. Hail, the executioner who's come to tear us from this world.
Lots of Shinobu talk on the show lately. So let's continue with them. They're from San Jose, California. They formed in the year 2002, and the lead singer, Mike Huguenot, would later go on to play in Hard Girls, as well as a bunch of Mike Park projects. They would... I forgot to write down where they came from, but they came from some indies in the... Fat and Funky, I think, is who put out the record prior to this album. They leave Asian Man for quote-unquote and really records, so they basically just leave Asian Man for Jeff Rosenstock. And the only records they released on Asian Man Records is Worstward Ho in 2006, and they're split with Pterodon in 2007. So that's the Hard Girls right there. Yeah, we just talked about the Hard Girls and Mike Huguenot a lot. But Shinobu only doing one record on Asian Man is kind of a surprise to me. At least like the records prior to Worstward Ho, like Fresh Spring Air and the Albert Square split. No, that's Hard Girls. Hard Girls did the Albert Square split. They blend together in my mind so easily. But it does make sense that the later stuff goes to Jeff Rosenstock, because Jeff Rosenstock stole Mike Huguenot and put him in his bands. But Mike Park also puts Mike Huguenot in his bands and puts Jeff Rosenstock in his bands. So it's kind of a little shared family there.
Yeah. Honestly, Jeff Rosenstock having 2 record labels to put out stuff that should have just been on Asian Man Records, it's like, what's the point? I assume a lot of the stuff that Jeff was doing on those labels was getting distro through Asian Man.
The Hard Girls record was Isn't It Worse came out on Really Records. It was crowdfunded, and then Mike Park distributed it.
So it's kind of almost like those labels are Asian Man imprints. It's kind of like the Discord related stuff that's like not actually Discord, like Peterbilt, but it's just like, well, we're gonna distro it too anyway. So
Sandwich, DeSoto, all those labels,
all those other labels where it was just like Ian being like, yeah, you should do your own thing. Yeah. Like, I kind of feel like Mike has a very similar attitude of like, yeah, you should do this too.
Yeah, he does actually say that. Like, I've watched it TikTok, because he talks on TikTok all the time, which I love his TikToks. His customer service emails are my favorite. But he did a video where he was talking about how like he recommends bands put their own stuff out because you get to own it forever and you could choose what you do with it forever. I think that's also why he kind of has the approach that he has to releasing music, as just like, here's a handshake. We're going to do this many copies. If you want to repress more, I'll do it. If you want to go to a different label and repress it, that's fine too. It's your record. You own it. So Mike Park doesn't own anybody else's records except his own.
Well, he doesn't pay for the recording.
Yes, that is the best way to be a label.
I mean, it's what you're doing. It's you're manufacturing and you're doing PR and you're helping do PR. It's like you're going to say you're going to pay, for one, you're going to pay them the license to put their music out for them, and you're going to give them a certain number of copies, at least, you're going to probably give them a few copies and then give them wholesale rates for them to buy copies that they want to sell them themselves. people figured it out
Yeah.
a long time ago, and I think people forgot how to do it.
I think where the other labels stumble is where they try and go bigger.
Yeah, they start trying to pay for the recordings and trying to own the catalogs. And it's like, you're putting out punk records. It doesn't need to cost $10,000 to record.
Right.
For you to press 500 copies and hopefully repress it.
I do wonder if he
could
does
record it for $3,000.
I wonder if he does like give a little money to help with recording. I wonder if he does, especially with the ones that he helped like form a band, you know, like stuff like Teens in Trouble. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like, pitch in a couple bucks to help fund the recording.
If he's like the producer, I would think he's probably throwing some money into that. But otherwise, I wouldn't expect him to. You know, like,
no,
I wouldn't expect any label when you're coming in as an indie, as an independent artist to work with an independent label. Like, why would they pay for it? I don't know. That whole concept is just alien to me. I mean, I get why people want money to pay for a record. If you gave me $20,000 to make a record, I'd use it.
yeah.
But you're not getting that money back. And I'm never getting that record back. So I'm not going to give you my best material. Yeah, I feel like Shinobu really should have just all been Asian Man.
Yeah.
But they weren't.
No, they weren't. I mean, they would go do
judge.
some stuff on Lauren Records too, which that's a San Jose label, so that makes sense why they would work with them. But there's been times where Lauren Records and Asian Man split release stuff too. Like that Summer Vacation record, I think, is a both labels band, and even the Winter Break records. So, let's talk about the Broadways.
We passed out on the kitchen floor, now the week gone by, and I haven't been dreaming. Blacked out, I can't remember exactly what I did last night. Wild stories in the morning. And I know that I'm out of control, because when I drink, nothing ever matters. I missed the sunrise, could barely open my eyes, and now I've got to pull myself together.
Also from Chicago, Illinois. They formed in 1996, and they formed after the breakup of the band Slapstick. So they're part of that Slapstick family tree. I cannot believe such a mid-ska band produced so many big punk bands. Slapstick are fine, but they have like one album, and it's nothing like special. It's just like, it's a good third wave record. But the band features Brendan Kelly and Chris McCann, who would later go on to play in the Lawrence Arms. The other members of the band would go on to play in the band Honor System. And they play a gruff punk rock sound, which is a little bit more raw and a little bit more, not hardcore, but just a little more crusty almost than the Lawrence Arms get. They would break up in 1998, and they only released one studio album and a handful of 7-inches. And on Asian Man, they released the Broken Star LP in 1997 and the Broken Van compilation in 2000. So again, this was randomly seeded, and we still got the two single LP bands on in the head-to-head. Very, very fitting. What are your feelings on the Broadways?
They're fine. I never really got into them. Of the major Slapstick family tree bands, I guess they're probably the least important to me.
I'm sure there are more. I think there's even more bands than these.
There's even more, I'm sure, that I'm completely forgetting. But I mean, of the big ones.
Yeah. While you're talking, I'll look and see.
But
who else is tied to Slapstick?
You know, there's not a lot of Broadway's material, and there's not a lot of it on Asian Man, so they're kind of like hard to judge in the grand scheme of things. But I think out of everything on this bracket, I think like there's like 3 bands that I'm like, I'm aware and familiar with them enough for them to be on this bracket, but that's about all. It's like the bare minimum that they get by. So, not my favorite.
Yeah, as far as the Broadways, for me, I do like them more than I like the early Lawrence Arms records. I think they figured out their sound a little quicker than the Lawrence Arms did, surprisingly, despite reducing your number of members. But the other members of the Broadways were Dan Hanaway and Rob DePaula. And then Dan Hanaway, he goes on to play in the band Whale Horse. And Rob DePaula, he is, I believe, the Honor System guy. But yeah, it's funny. I feel like they figured that sound out just a little quicker than the Lawrence Arms sound. Don't know how that happened, but I enjoyed it. I talked about it not too long ago on And I'm Listening, so there's not a ton there that I really haven't hashed over recently, but it is fitting. Again, another single LP band going up against another one. So let's go ahead and vote. Who are you going with, Shinobu or the Broadways?
I think Shinobu appeals to me more.
I'm going to go with the Broadways because I do think it's a really good record. And I think Shinobu's best material is their other stuff. So we are going to defer to our tiebreaker. So we have reached out to our good buddy, the Madball Mystery Caller, and he broke our ties for us. So he voted for, in this head-to-head, the Broadways. So the Broadways are moving on to the next round. Okay, our next head-to-head, it is the number 2 seed, the Bruce Lee Band, up against the number 15 seed, Sundials.
Solace and distractions like party drugs and celebrity culture. What do we say to the generations that want to know why the world is gone? We saw the problem, said who can blame them? No one told them they were wrong. What are we gonna say? What are we gonna say? First get the dollars, then get the dollars.
Some background on the Bruce Lee Band from California. They formed in 1995, and the Bruce Lee Band is the band that Mike Park formed immediately after the breakup of Skank and Pickle. They are a third wave ska band, and they started on Dill as well, the pre-Asian Man Records band. I almost thought about considering the Dill record stuff, and that meant we could have had Skank and Pickle on here, but I was also like, it's technically a different lineage, so we didn't include them. The band has had many different members throughout the years, including members of Less Than Jake, Hard Girls, Emu 330, and Jeff Rosenstock. They take a pretty long break after 2005, and they begin again in 2014. And this is the most active Mike Park band post Skank and Pickle. And considering how many artists have been in the band, you can kind of go on forever, kind of talking about everything. They released 4 LPs and a handful of LP EPs, and released on Asian Man Records was the Beautiful World EP from 2005, Everything Will Be Alright, My Friend in 2014, Rental Eviction in 2020, Division in the Heartland EP in 2021, and One Step Forward, Two Steps Back in 2022. The very first Bruce Lee Band was on Dill Records, and then gets reissued, I think, like a year later, too, on the label, so you can kind of think of that one, too. But to me, the Bruce Lee Band is the perfect example of the platonic ideal of a Mike Park band. Because it's his band, and it's always his band, and Skank and Pickle was more of a collaborative effort amongst those other musicians. So to me, Bruce Lee Band, it's the Mike Park Band. He could have just called it that. Though he does solo records under his own name, too. Bruce Lee Band thoughts?
Yeah, it is the best, most consistent Mike Park band. And it's kind of funny, like, only the best Bruce Lee Band material is on Asian Man Records, technically. So not including the kind of weak first album.
With all the Less Than Jake guys on it.
Yeah.
Wonder why.
It basically makes it so that the Bruce Lee Band has a perfect discography for the purposes of this bracket. Great stuff. Yeah, I love the Bruce Lee Band.
I think I like their Union stuff better than the original. Like, even that EP, Beautiful World EP. I think everything he's done since bringing back the name, the Bruce Lee Band, which I have a feeling he only put on hold because of the weird troubles with calling it the Bruce Lee Band and getting called by like a family member or whatever of Bruce Lee that was like, you can't use this name.
Yeah. The Bruce Lee family is very
litigious.
Yeah. Protective.
Yeah. They were not happy with how he was portrayed in that Tarantino movie. But it's like, it's called Unreliable Narrator.
It's also an alternate history movie where they kill the Manson family with a dog
and a flamethrower
in the corner of a counter.
Not to date the show, but David Fincher doing the sequel to that movie is going to be insane.
For a TV show.
Right, it's a TV sequel, right.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah, Bruce Lee Band's great.
Yeah, I love him. I mean, I love Mike Park. He's just a phenomenal musician, and he would not call himself talented, but you are talented. If you come up with these songs like this, you're a talented musician. I love his voice. He's one of those artists that's like, yeah, he's got some warts, but man, they make him special. They make him unique sounding. Like, nobody sounds like Mike Park. No one. And I even think... Oh, go ahead.
Mike Park is like... He's a better musician and singer than he thinks of himself, but I understand why he thinks that he's not great. And what is really great about him is the fact that most people can do what he does if they do it. Like, Mike Park is such a good case, a great inspiration to just be like, oh, well, that's something I can probably try to do, but most people just don't try to do. And Mike, I think, is someone who, like, probably just doesn't psych himself out, and that's why he pulls it off, because he's just like, this is all I can do, and I'm gonna do the best I can, and there it is. Oh, well, like, I can objectively compare it to things that I think are better, but, like, this is what I could do, so I'm gonna put it out. And it's such a, just, like, the confidence really carries him. I think he's a great writer and musician in more objective terms as well, but there is just that accessibility to it, and that just, like, groundedness to what he does that I think is really inspirational.
And if you consider things as far as who's important to the history of Asian Man Records, I mean, who's more important, really, than Mike Park and his own bands? So that has to be considered while we're voting. And it's kind of a bummer that they're up against a one-album band with Sundials.
I turned off Harrison to Clay going east into the right-hand lane. And in my hurry coming home, I forgot it was an only way. I saw the headlights of incoming cars. They say you think about your life tomorrow. I saw its headlights, so I thought that it felt right. Out of mind, 'cause you think it's gonna hurt me. I don't mind, 'cause I know I've gotta be completely broken. Completely broken. If you could find
So
me
Sundials were from Richmond, Virginia, another totally not the scene that he pulls artists from. They formed in 2009, and they play I don't know how to describe their sound. It's like a power poppy kind of punk, but also some indie rock in there as well. And there's some, like, just some folky elements too. Like, I feel like you hear a lot of acoustic guitar on their records. But from Richmond, Virginia, it was a very different scene. Like, they were putting out records during the same time period as Spraynard, and they were part of that wave of bands, like part of the emo revival wave, despite not being an emo revival band themselves. They would play with a lot of those kind of bands, do splits with they did a split with Spraynard. They would do splits with bands in that scene. So despite being in Richmond, they were still very considered part of that scene, but they are also in Richmond halfway between No Idea and the Philly scene. So they always had a little bit of a No Idea Gainesville feel to them too. So they're kind of a weird little band. Richmond's a great scene with a bunch of different sounds, and Sundials were one of the best. And the Sundials family tree is also huge. Like, there's a ton of spinoffs of that family tree as well. Like, was it Close Talker, Smoke Break, Family Cat, Tiger Tail, like Springtime. So many bands kind of spin out of that Sundials tree. And they, prior to coming to Asia Man, they hopped around the East Coast indies. I think they have a lot of 7 inches just released on different labels, and they finally come to the West Coast to do Asian Man Records with their one LP, When I Couldn't Breathe, in 2012, and their compilation, Always Whatever, in 2013, which the album art was designed to mimic the Alkaline Trio compilation. So I think this is a case, too, of, much like the Spraynard record that was released on Asian Man, maybe the Sundials guys were just fan of Asian Man Records, and they pitched him their album, and he was into it, and put it out. They would leave to go put out their, 10-inch Kick. I think that came out on Top Shelf, and then they were pretty much done after that. They didn't last much longer, so this is their final LP as well.
Yeah, I am kind of bummed that Sundials is in this round. It's very unfair. to go against Bruce Lee Band. I think Sundials are a great band that are wildly slept on and underappreciated. This is their best stuff, on the label. And they just, unfortunately, I think fell between too many different scenes and were not niche enough to be really successful at the time that they existed, because I think that what they were doing was influenced by a wide variety of bands. I think there were similarities, the No Idea stuff. There's definitely similarities to the Philly stuff, the Long Island stuff. There's, Alkaline Trio and Lemonhead's influences. They just kind of pulled from a lot of different places, and also were in a generally overlooked and underappreciated music scene. Because Richmond's cool, and we know it, but a lot of people didn't know it outside of that scene at that time.
Richmond's a cool city in general, too. I visited it once, spent a couple days there, and I loved it. I think if I was going to move to another, southern city, I would be between Nashville and Richmond, but I think I would lean Richmond. It's just a cool little town, and doesn't quite have they don't have the touristiness that Nashville has, and Nashville has a really bad traffic problem, too, because it's one of those cities that, grew too big too fast.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure wasn't there.
Yeah. I would not move to Nashville.
I like Nashville. I had a really good time in Nashville, but it's hard to get around. It's not an easy town to get around. Richmond is much easier to get around. They have a lot of tolls, though.
They do have a lot of tolls, and I have accidentally gotten on one of those toll roads and got a ticket for it.
Well, let's vote. The Bruce Lee Band or Sundials?
It's the Bruce Lee Band. Very unfortunate for the Sundials. I wish that they were not kicked out of this first round.
Yeah. They are. You're right, though. They are slept on. They are what I would define as a classically underrated band, because they had 2 great LPs and then a bunch of really great EPs. And honestly, I've liked most of the spin-off bands, too. So it's sad to see them go, but you're not going to beat Mike Park in his own label. Very easily, at least. All right, our next head-to-head is the number 6 head-to-head with our number 7 seed, Colossal, going up against the number 10 seed, AJJ.
Something we asked you, did the questions ever odd and lewd true? Now it sounded to be the questions true. So like to resubmit now. Was it something I asked you? Did I stutter? Did my words elude you? Did I actually be open and sure? Any trace of dignity, keep it underground. Keep any memory of us buried underground.
So Colossal, from Elgin, Illinois, formed in 2001. They play math rocky emo. They initially featured Rob Kellenberger of the band Tuesday. He would later be replaced by Neil Hennessy of the Lawrence Arms, and then some of the members of the band would go on to play in the Smoking Popes and Duval. They only released 1 album and 1 EP, and it was all on Asian Man Records. They ran from 2001 to 2007, reunited briefly in 2016 for an anniversary split with Owen and some shows. But as far as Asian Man is concerned, they released their 2003 EP, Brave the Elements, as well as the LP, Welcome the Problems, in 2004. And Colossal are interesting. They started in 2001. They broke up in 2007. They missed the whole emo revival. But their sound is very much in that vibe and that sound. I know they're probably more inspired by American football. They're from Illinois, so that makes sense. They're from Elgin. And they play tappy emo with some trumpet. So they're an American football inspired band. But funnily enough, they did it like 10 years before everybody else decided to rip off American football, which kind of gives them a little bit more credibility than those other bands. What are your thoughts on Colossal? I don't think we've ever really talked about them much.
I really enjoyed Colossal when I found them many years ago. I would have found them around the time of the emo revival that was going on, and it was definitely presented to me as being like, hey, look, this is what's happening now 10 years ago with
yeah,
no one that you would expect to do this. Like,
right. The people.
As far as like the people that that were in it, Neil Hennessy, like the fact that Colossal is a Lawrence Arms side project.
Yeah. Well, like Eli Caterer from Smoking Popes was in them from 04 to 05. Like,
yeah.
I don't think he's on the LP, but yeah, you got Smoking Popes and Lawrence Arms people doing tappy, mathy emo.
It's been a long time since I've like really listened to them, but I really did enjoy them when I did, and always enjoyed it more than, American football. And probably, like, I think I kind of appreciated them in probably the same degree to which I was interested in like Algernon, which isn't like super into them. Like I wasn't into them to the degree that I was listening to like Snowing or Castavet, any of those bands that we were really into at the height of that revival. But I enjoyed them and should come back to them. I think I've almost considered them to talk about on the show before, but
it would be a good one to do.
Haven't pulled the trigger. And Colossal was always so, like, because they were, like, for what they were doing at the time that they were doing it and being on Asian Man Records, it's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
None of these things go together.
You know what I always found kind of interesting about Colossal is, yeah, they were clearly inspired by American football, but I also feel like there's a lot of the Louisville math rock sound in there, too. Like, it feels like presentation-wise, I get a lot of similarity to, Juno 44 and maybe Karate. They weren't a Louisville band, but like a little bit of Karate in there too. Just this like weird little time period of like kind of mathy emo that was kind of bubbling under. It was not like the big thing at the time. I don't even remember if American football were considered a success when they first came out. I think they were. I think they were an instant hit, but they were just so short-lived that they became a cult band. And then the thing that everybody copied after that. So, yeah, it's a very unique record for Asian Man and the time that it came out in. And AJJ.
Earnesty and clarity, those wonderful mentalities of decent positivity are all that we can strive. But misery and poverty, they follow me and my family. And though it seems that I can't win, I think I have to try. But everyone's afraid of me, they'll never see that we all bleed the same damn blood each night. So you'll go your way, I'll go mine. I hope we meet up later on down the line.
Let's talk about their time on Asian Man Records. Originally from Phoenix, Arizona, they formed in 2004, and they started off as an acoustic folk punk band. It was an acoustic guitar, an upright bass, and a mandolin player. The mandolin player eventually leaves the band, and it has now consistently been Sean Bonnet, the guitarist and singer, and Ben Galati on bass, or Galati, I don't know exactly where the emphasis is on that one. They started off as an all-acoustic band. They eventually moved into a full electric band. They kind of maintained some of that folk element, but I think the folk punk element is pretty much gone at this point, and you would just maybe just call it, I don't know. It's just indie rock. That's really the only thing I would really call it. There are some like Neutral Milk Hotel style acoustic elements in their music as well, but they joined Asian Man Records after a few self-released and local label releases. They have 8 studio albums total, still active today. Originally formed under the name Andrew Jackson Jihad, changed it to just AJJ. They would leave the label to join Side One Dummy, and the records they put out on Asian Man were The People Who Can Eat People Are the Luckiest in the World from 2007, Can't Maintain in 2009, Knife Man in 2011, Candy Cigarettes and Cap Guns, Issue Problems and Such, which is a compilation from 2011, and another compilation called Rompilation from 2012. So we have 3 LPs and 2 comps on Asian Man Records. Those comps are only a year apart too, which is very funny. But all right, AJJ. We've talked about them a lot. They're a band I think everybody knows that we love. Do we do Can't Maintain on the show? I think. What do we do? Knife Man. I'm blanking.
We did Knife Man.
Knife Man? Okay.
Yeah. So this is their best run of records.
Yeah, easily.
Like, People Who Can Eat People, Can't Maintain, Knife Man. Those 3 LPs, that's just the peak of their career.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible records. Super important personally. It's nice that you get the compilations of the early material and some of the other... Because Rompilation is the one that collects, like, the EPs that are adjacent to, like, People and Can't Maintain.
Yeah.
So I think Rompilation includes, like, the Ghost Mice split.
Let's see. While you're talking, I can look that up.
No, I don't think it includes the Ghost Mice split.
No, because that's like half an album.
Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't. But yeah, I mean, that Rompilation has Love Will Suck Us Apart, Still Smoking, Lucky Strike, Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah, I've got the rundown as what they come from. So
Yeah.
it's the Mischief Brew split, some comp appearance songs, that Sun, Smog, and Hate split, the Chronicles of Chef Joe Arpaio split, the Partners in 818 split. There's a live set from Glasgow, and Operation Stack Cola is on here as well too. Yeah. I will also say, I guess I kind of forgot to put this on here. I do think Only God Can Judge Me was reissued on Asian Man as well, but also as like a comp version. So let's see. No, maybe not. It's just a 10-inch. Never mind. I thought it was a full reissue. But yeah. And the Candy Gun cap, all that stuff, that is, that's the pre-Asian Man stuff that is.
Yeah.
Issue Problems, and it's their first record that is rough. There's some good stuff on it, but it's rough. More lyrically than sonically.
So, that's probably, looking at this bracket, that's one of my favorite runs of any of the bands on here. And there's some pretty strong ones on here.
Yeah. You want to vote?
Yeah.
All right. You going AJJ or Colossal?
AJJ.
Yeah, I'm going AJJ too. Yeah. They're like one of my favorite bands from this time period, and those 3 records especially. It's their best material. So, yeah. And then the Colossal I like a lot, but I haven't spent nearly as much time with that one as I did AJJ. All right, our number 7 head-to-head. It is the number 3 seed, Slow Gherkin, up against the number 14 seed, the Lawrence Arms.
It's Christmas Day in gay Paris, not so gay for gay Lindsay. 16 hours in a sweaty kitchen for money makes minimum wage look good. 6 a.m. on the subway, stop station through the doorway. Crowds of people standing, yelling, screaming. What's going on? Oh no, I must be dreaming. And the city forgets they didn't even perceive. And the trains keep blowing up week after week.
So, some stats on Slow Gherkin. They're from Santa Cruz, California. They formed in 1993, and they are a third wave ska band, but they're kind of weird. They came to the label 1 year after their first record was released on Raj Records, and that album is reissued immediately. So this is another case of a band whose first album turns right around. It comes out on Asian Man. They broke up in 1997 and have off and on reunited. I think they just played that Supernova Ska Festival, and then there's rumors that they are reuniting for a little bit more substantial run right now. But on Asian Man Records, they released Shed Some Skin in 1998, Run Screaming in 2002, and a compilation called Death of a Ska Band in 2011. Slow Gherkin. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about Slow Gherkin ever.
Yeah, my note for this is just the word okay. I have not spent any time with Slow Gherkin. I know vaguely what they sound like. And what they sound like is a less appealing version of like a Mike Park band, I think. Maybe some similarities to some MU330. It's just not as interesting or as engaging.
They're third wave band. They kind of just feel like just another third wave band. I feel like they're up there with bands like Potshot or Blue Meanies, the other ska bands who put stuff out on Asian Man Records in the 90s, but we didn't include on these brackets because they just weren't that big of a deal for the label. Slow Gherkin get on here due to having 2 LPs and probably being a little more notable than some of those other bands, but sonically, they're not that different. The thing that always stood out about Slow Gherkin to me is on their first record, they did the Hava Nagila cover. And it very comes across as like novelty. They feel like a borderline novelty band. I don't think you would call them that. I think Sheds of Skin is just kind of a straight ahead third wave ska record, but they're very close to being a novelty band.
I think they're less of a novelty band than Mustard Plug.
You think Mustard Plug's more of a novelty?
Yeah. There's probably something there if I really spent the time with it, but nothing I've ever heard has made me really want to. And it's not even from the perspective of ew, turn that off. It's just all right, fine.
I've always liked them. I like their 3 LPs. I'd be happy with a new record from them because they did an EP a couple years ago that was pretty good. It was a 3-song EP from 2015, 16, something like that. And they were still pretty good. So they also kind of strike me as maybe they're probably more talented musicians than you'd expect. They kind of seem to know their instruments pretty well, but I don't know if the songwriting necessarily there. But they're not my favorite of the third wave ska bands, but I do enjoy them. And on the other end, Lawrence Arms. A very, very big band. So, also from Chicago, Illinois. Formed in 1999, they were formed after the breakup of the Broadways. Brandon Kelly and Chris McCaughan joined Neil Hennessy to form a trio that's been the lineup the entire time. So, that's pretty impressive to maintain that. They are also part of the Slapstick family tree. And to me, Lawrence Arms are one of the bands that you would just say is definitively a orgcore band. There's not a ton of wiggle room. The people who listen to them are orgcore fans, and Lawrence Arms kind of even have their own just base of fans. They started on Asian Man Records. Their very first release was on there. They did leave for Fat Wreck and released quite a few records there. But also Brendan Kelly and Chris McCaughan have released solo albums on the label. Chris, I think, did some Wandering Birds there. I may be wrong. But Chris McCaughan definitely did the Sundowners records on Asian Man. They're still active today. They have 7 studio albums. And the records they released on Asian Man Records were A Guided Tour of Chicago in 1999, Ghost Stories in 2000, a split EP with the Chinkies called Present Day Memories in 2001, and the compilation Cocktails and Dreams in 2005. So, Lawrence Arms. We've covered A Guided Tour of Chicago on the show before. That was a long time ago. That was an old episode. They're a band that I really only care about 2 records from.
Yeah, and those records aren't on Asian Man, are they?
They're not. Agony and Apathy and Greatest Story Ever Told, I believe. Those are the ones I like the most. People love Oh Calcutta. I think it's fine, but...
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lawrence Arms, it's an okay start. I mean, it's not a bad start. The Guided Tour of Chicago is fine. It's just, I'm not the
production on that one's pretty rough. That's a record that, the guitar tone is the exact same through the entire record, so it gets kind of tiring to listen to.
Yeah.
Ghost Stories is much better than Guided Tour.
Lawrence Arms, like you said, I kind of only care about 2 records, and honestly, I care about those 2 records less than you do. I've just never really been that into Lawrence Arms, and I don't think that the Asian Man material really makes much more of a case for them.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I'd argue that, yeah, Lawrence Arms on Asian Man, it's one of the most important bands on there, but I don't think these records are that important. The Fat Wreck stuff feels like it's a way bigger deal than the Asian Man records.
Yeah, them going on to another label makes a bigger label, makes their Asian Man material more important.
Right.
Than it would have been had they just, like, stayed on Asian Man.
I think longevity helps too, and they do have a very dedicated fan base.
Yeah, I do think that the majority of Lawrence Arms, we're false Lawrence Arms fans.
Yeah.
The majority of Lawrence Arms fans like everything.
Yeah, we're fake fans. Because people love Oh Calcutta. Like, that's the record that people think is the best, and you and I are like, it's fine. And then, like, Metropole and Skeleton Key, like, their later albums are just kind of whatever. Metropole's not good. I think it's an actively bad record. Skeleton Key's fine. There's a weird cult of personality around Brendan Kelly, too, that I don't understand.
Yeah, he's not that funny.
No, the funniest thing he ever did was Nihilist Arby's. And once it was revealed it was him, it stopped being funny.
Got a lot less funny. Once you knew who was doing it.
They're beloved in Chicago. They're, like, Chicago as hell. What is it about Chicago bands who are just like, we got to make sure to put the Chicago flag on everything we do? Because they do that too.
People from Chicago have a very, we're Chicago. Like, they just got to say it. They got to make sure that you know they're from Chicago, as if you can't tell.
Yeah, right, by their accents. Yeah, it is funny. Chicago people have an attitude that is very common with New Yorkers and Philly and Boston people that, like, most other major cities don't really have. Like, I don't think there's we're LA people. Like, there's so many transplants in LA that it doesn't have, like, one identity. They got Holly Weird. That's
there is like an LA, like, but it's not as general. They're a little more specific to, like, parts of LA and how long you've lived in LA, or what demographic you are, like, there's definitely, like, East LA is a different thing from, like, Compton, and
there's a lot of different types of LA.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different types of New York, even. Like, Brooklyn, Bronx is different from Manhattan. Like, that's very different. Chicago feels more unified, and, like, I know there's different sides of Chicago, and then there's all the suburbs and everything, too, and I'll be honest, if we're going with the big 3 cities of North America, I'd probably go to Chicago before I'd move to LA or New York. So I've never visited. I would like to. I think I would have a good time in Chicago, but I can't think of too many cities that have their own flags that, like, people know. Like, the Chicago flag is a very well-known thing. I know DC has that flag, but, like, people don't rep it like Chicago does. And I can't think of another state or city that even, like, reps their city flags. People don't even rep their state flags that much. Texas does, I guess, but yeah, it is funny. I don't know any other city flags that exist that are even New York doesn't. In LA don't have, like, city flags. The I Heart New York is, like, the only thing in New York that I feel the t-shirt or whatever that was, that feels like their branding, but that's kind of it. Well, let's vote here. Are we going with Slow Gherkin or the Lawrence Arms?
Man. You forgot the Charlotte flag. The Charlotte. You see?
Oh, yeah,
Charlotte
we've got a
flag.
queen. Yeah,
the Charlotte flag looks like a bank logo.
It looks like a checkers queen. Yeah, I don't. You see people put that queen crown on stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's a purple flag, right? And
it's green.
See, we don't even have a consistent color.
Yeah,
yeah. Because, like, Queens College, I think, is a purple.
I think, honestly, I'm just sorry. I'm looking at all these city flags. Like, designers went fucking ape. Like, wild shit. Better than most state flags. City flags look cool as hell. The Phoenix flag, the Phoenix flag is just the Phoenix logo, which you see everywhere on a maroon background. But, like, you definitely see the Phoenix logo everywhere. People use that a lot. But if I'm voting on Lawrence Arms versus
Slow Gherkin.
Slow Gherkin, city flags are more interesting of a conversation.
What's the Santa Cruz flag look like?
At this point, the early Lawrence Arms material is enough of a known quantity to me that I'm more interested in hearing the Slow Gherkin stuff. So that's what I'm going to vote for.
I'm going to vote for Lawrence Arms. I do feel like they are much more important to Asian Man Records than Slow Gherkin is. I like Slow Gherkin. I also kind of suspect the pickle theme might be part of why they were on Asian Man so early, but I'm going to vote Lawrence Arms. So that means we need our tiebreaker to come in and let us know. And he actually told me, he's like, you're not going to believe it, but I'm voting Lawrence Arms over Slow Gherkin. He is a Brendan Kelly hater, I think is how you would describe him. He is not a Brendan Kelly fan, but I think even he recognized Lawrence Arms over Slow Gherkin this time around. So Lawrence Arms, move on. All right, and here we are with our final head-to-head in the first round. Second round will go by much faster. We have the number 6 seed, the Chinkies, going up against the number 11 seed, Lemuria.
Look up at the sky tonight. Saw the cold wind breathing through my side. Thought about my dad tonight. And asked God, is he gonna be alright? Now my mind thinks I can't give enough. I can't pour enough. And my love is not enough in this big world. And my love is not enough in this big world.
I always never feel like I should be allowed to say the Chinkies name, but here we are. Mike Park did this to us.
Yeah.
You have to call them that.
The name of the band.
Right.
The name of the band is a slur.
It is, which was the point. It's the point. It is the point.
Yeah.
It would probably get bleeped on television. Maybe, though. It also might be obscure enough that people are like, what?
Yeah, actually, I don't know.
Out of the Asian, like, racist slurs, I don't think it's the one people think of that often. I think they think of the Vietnam one more. But anyway, we're not talking about Asian slurs here.
Yeah, we're not ranking
Power ranking the Asian slurs. I would listen to a podcast of that hosted by Asian people, because I think that would be a very funny discussion and conversation. But we are two very white people, so we cannot make this.
Yeah.
All right, so the Chinkies are from San Francisco, California. They formed in 1997. This is another Mike Park band. So originally the members of Tuesday were the backing band on this record, including, I believe it's Rob Kellenberger. I think Dan might be on there too. It is very funny to me that the band called the Chinkies started with all the white guys from Tuesday and Mike Park. But by the time the first record comes out, they actually have band members who are all Asian people. And these are all very accomplished musicians. I suspect it was a case of, well, I gotta get these songs recorded and I'll make a band later. Because a band of all Asians called the Chinkies works, and you can't have Tuesday backing Mike Park and call that band the Chinkies and get away with it. But the members of the Chinkies come from bands or go on to be in bands such as the RX Bandits, Mike Choi being a very notable member. We have a member from Juju. We have a member of Short Round in here. So very cool little lineup of musicians, and they would record the later records. They are another third wave ska band. Sonically, they're very similar to what the Bruce Lee band did. They also feel a little more serious. I think they're going for more social commentary than the Bruce Lee band did initially. Bruce Lee band, though, does become more politically socially conscious in the reunion period because the Chinkies are done by that point. They have 3 full lengths. They stopped being a band in 2001, but they did come off for some one-off reunions, and they had a new EP in 2020. And on Asian Man Records, they released The Chinkies Are Coming in 1998, Peace Through Music in 1999, Searching for a Brighter Future in 2001, the aforementioned split with the Lawrence Arms in 2001, and KA Music, Korean American Music, in 2020. I don't think all the members of the original band were all Korean. But the reunion version for the EP is Mike Choi and Mike Park, and I think they're the only ones really. So I think that's why they went with Korean American. I think some of the other ones are they're also Chinese and Japanese members. But what are your feelings on the Chinkies?
A good band, and probably one of Mike Park's most consistent bands, oddly enough, because I don't think that they have really any of the highest highs in his discography overall, but they're just very enjoyable from beginning to end. So, kind of a weird one to rank within Mike Park bands. They're not really the one I'm going to reach for first, but I'm also never disappointed when I listen to them.
Yeah, I don't think they're as funny as the Bruce Lee Band does, because the Bruce Lee Band does some funny lyrics in some of their songs, and I do think the Chinkies were more serious, and that was kind of the intent, which it's more in line with his solo records, like the Mike Park acoustic records, which there's 3 or 4 of those, and those are all pretty serious albums. But his stuff with the Skank and Pickle and the Bruce Lee Band, he would throw in some silliness to it. So I think there was a different attitude to this band, and maybe that kind of kept people, I think the name also kind of kept people a little bit of away. They're like, what is that? I can't, what? But
yeah, can't wear this on a t-shirt.
Yeah, he can't. Unless you're Asian, you could, but yeah. Honestly, I feel really bad saying it over and over again here. So but it's okay. It's okay. He named the band that. So, yeah, it's a more serious band, which makes sense. The subject of racism towards Asian people is a topic of tons of Mike Park's music. It's important to talk about. So, and he did the Rock Against Racism tour, and he created that whole thing. So, yeah, it's a great band. I don't go to them as often as I do most of his other bands, though, like you. But every time I do, they're great. They're all really enjoyable experiences. All right, and now Lemuria. From Buffalo, New York. They formed in 2004, and they went on hiatus in 2018. They played I don't know how you describe Lemuria's sound. It's noisy, it's angular, indie punk. I feel like there's a lot of post-punk elements in their sound, too. They have a unique sound and style that I haven't really heard too many bands do. They give off the impression that they're much poppier than they are, but when you listen to the records and the instrumentation, I'm this is kind of dark and heavy. That's surprising. We have Sheena Ozella and Alex Kearns. They make up the songwriting duo of the band. They also sing all of the songs. They've had a number of bassists, I believe 4 or 5 bassists throughout the years. And they have what's the split? It's a 40-60 split. And I think it's 60% is written by Alex Kearns and 40 is written by Sheena. But Sheena sings 60, and then Alex sings 40. It's kind of a funny little split they've got there. They would leave Asian Man Records for Bridge 9, and they have released 4 albums total. But their Asian Man Records output consists of the first collection in 2007, which was a compilation of all of their early EPs and demos. Get Better in 2007, their first studio album. And Recreational Hate in 2017, their final record. So they did 2 on, I think they did 2 on Bridge 9. That's Pebble and The Distance Is So Big. Both disappointing records. Lemuria, thoughts on them?
I miss the old Lemuria. I still do. They shouldn't have left. They made the joke about when we saw them, one of the times we saw them, they were like, this song's in drop D and it's why we got signed to Bridge 9.
Yeah.
And it's them signing to Bridge 9 was a mistake, though. That record is still kind of disappointing. It's better than I remember. At the time.
I remember at the time there was like an effort from Bridge 9 to sign a bunch of bands that were outside of the sound that they had cultivated previously. Like, they were known for primarily just being a hardcore label with, you know, bands like Shai Hulud and like Terror and that kind of stuff. And then I remember they like signed Lemuria and Iron Cheek within like, I think like a year of each other, and it being like, whoa, that's weird. But and it still felt weird.
Yeah. I think Get Better's a fantastic record.
Oh, yeah.
I think that compilation's great, too. That early stuff was great.
It's so good that you can listen to it like an album, which is I don't know if it's a sequencing thing. I don't know how those comps are. I need to look and see if they're like chronological, like all the EPs are together, or if it's a case of like, no, we just shuffled around to make the most sense as a record. I'd have to tell you that. It
seemed like they were in chronological order.
It does, right? I think it is. And it's weird that it works way better on Asian Man than it works on most other labels' comps. It's kind of strange.
But, yeah, I spent a ton of time listening to that early Lemuria stuff, and haven't gone back in a long time. I would be curious to. Get Better would definitely be a really interesting record to do on the show. We did Pebble. No, we didn't do Pebble.
We did The Distance Is So Big, right?
No, we just did the Chautauqua County EP.
We've never done an LP. That's
we
wild.
haven't done one of their LPs.
Because there's only one we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Though that being said, I'd be interested in talking about Recreational Hate. I don't know if you've listened to that one. That's better than both their Bridge 9 records.
I haven't. I might have heard it that year, but I don't think I listened to it more than once. I tried really hard with The Distance Is So Big, and it just it was better than Pebble, but it just still didn't. Wahoo!
That's always the song we refer to when we talk about that record.
It just didn't click.
Yeah.
But yeah, their Asian Man output, at least the first part of it, you know, is great.
Yeah. Well, let's vote. This is a tough one. The Chinkies versus Lemuria.
If we're going by... Man, that's tough.
Asian Man output. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and go first. I'm going to go with Lemuria because I think Get Better is that good of a record.
That's what I was thinking.
It's such a strong record. That record, it's on my 21st Century Breakdown. I already did it. I think the most recent one, it was on that one. It's such a good record. It's so important. Lemuria became the shortcut reference to any female-fronted punk similar band.
For better or worse.
For better or worse. But that shows you how big and important Lemuria was, though. Especially this record.
Lemuria, too, was dabbling in indie rock.
Mm-hmm.
Not, going back to Superchunk and Built to Spill and Guided by Voices kind of indie rock stuff from a punk perspective before most people were. And I think Lemuria is the biggest touchstone for punk kids doing indie rock. Yeah, and it makes me think, like, this is such a funny, like, there's more Chinkies material, and it's great. It's all very enjoyable. But like I said, it's like, it's the least remarkable in terms of, like, individual records out of, like, Mike Park Band's output. And it's like, this Lemuria, it's not a whole lot of material, but it's got that one record, that one album. And how important that is to a band's discography, their perception, their cultural relevance. It's like, you gotta get that one album. And they did.
And I think there are more interesting Mike Park bands. I think the Bruce Lee band is the better version of his third wave ska. And then I'm more interested in hearing stuff like Ogi Kubo Station and like some of the stuff that he did that wasn't third wave ska with other people. Like the Kitty Cat Fan. He was in Kitty Cat Fan Club, like he's not the singer of that band, but he's like a big part of that band. So yeah, out of the like long list of Mike Park bands, I think the Chinkies are less important than the Bruce Lee band, and Lemuria is more important to music as a whole and indie punk as a sound because they are one of the bands that kind of helped shape it. So yeah, you're a Lemuria vote, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that gives us our second round, and we'll go through these much quicker. So it is Alkaline Trio against Tuesday.
All right.
Battling themselves in the mirror, I guess.
Yeah, Matt Skiba and Dan fighting Dan. It's got to be Alkaline Trio.
Yes. Alkaline Trio are more important in general than Tuesday is. They have more output on the label even.
I mean, if you just boil it down to one album each, it's Goddamnit versus Freewheelin. It's got to be Goddamnit.
Yeah. I will be voting for Alkaline Trio as well. All right. I like to imagine, you know how in fighting games, if you both choose the same, like two people are playing and they both choose the same character, one has a different color, colorway.
Yeah.
That's how I imagined the fight looked like. It's like when two Dans.
It's like gray skin Dan Andriano and in a blue gi.
Yeah, and the other one just looks like Dan now, how he dresses. A flat brim cap. Oh, one's got a hat, one doesn't.
It's Dan with hair, Dan without.
There you go. That's true, because he had hair in Tuesday.
And he had hair in early Alkaline Trio, too.
Yeah, during this time period. I think he cuts it by the next one, but yeah. All right, our next head-to-head, it is the MU 330s up against the Broadways. This was very easy to me. MU 330.
Yeah.
All right. So our next one, this is rough. The Bruce Lee Band versus AJJ.
That is tough. Man, I knew it was going to come to this. I kind of actually thought it might be final round.
They were on the same side of the bracket, so it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. I am going to have to go with AJJ.
Wow. Okay.
Because it is so important to me. That's an incredible 3-album run. That's all 4.5 5-star records. I don't think I'm quite that high on the Bruce Lee Band stuff.
Oof. Well, I'm gonna go with the Bruce Lee Band because it is Mike Park. It's his label. It's his most prominent output post Skank and Pickle. Feels the most important to me. So we're gonna go to the tiebreaker. And fortunately, this is a tiebreaker that he picked the same bands to go into the same round, so we could actually use them. So our tiebreaker says AJJ moves on. So, wow. Mike Park has been eliminated from his own bracket.
Yeah. Well,
there's always a possibility.
He wins in the long run. It's all his records.
It's all Mike Park, really, but yeah. All right, our next head-to-head, it is the Lawrence Arms up against Lemuria. This feels pretty easy to me.
Yeah.
Get Better is way more important than Guided Tour or Ghost Stories. And I just likes it better, too.
Yeah.
So I'm voting Lemuria. All right, our head-to-head, our final four. We have Alkaline Trio up against Emu 330. Woof.
Yeah, that's tough.
That is very tough. Brother. Woof.
I'm going to say, as much as I love Emu 330, the sheer number of hours I have listened to Goddamnit alone, I'm going to have to go with Alkaline Trio.
Wow, okay. I might have to say the same argument for MU330 because I've listened to Crab Rangoon and Ultra Panic more than I've listened to Goddamnit and Maybe I'll Catch Fire in my life. On an average day, I'm going to pick MU330 probably over Alkaline Trio because Crab Rangoon is again, like I said, an all-time favorite record. So I'm going to vote for MU330, which means we're going to have to use our tiebreaker again. And this one's going to be a little interesting, and I'll explain why in a second. So, in the initial first round of Alkaline Trio versus the Smoking Popes, our friend here voted for the Smoking Popes over Alkaline Trio. So, he pushed Alkaline Trio down to go up against Tuesday, and then he voted on Smoking Popes over Tuesday. So, he pushed Smoking Popes all the way up to this point. Now, back in the Kepi versus MU330 round, he voted for MU330. And then for the Shinobu Broadways round, he voted for the Broadways. But then the MU330 Broadways round, he voted for MU330. So what we're going to say is because he passed Alkaline Trio through, he passed Smoking Popes over Alkaline Trio, his head-to-head was Smoking Popes versus MU330. We're going to slot Alkaline Trio in there and say that his MU330 pick won because that's who he has in his final. So... yeah,
I mean, he eliminated Alkaline Trio earlier than
did.
MU330.
Yeah.
So, MU330.
So he considers MU330 better than Alkaline Trio, so we will take that as his vote there. And moving on. So this one's wild. AJJ versus Lemuria. I will say this. There was a tour around 2008 that came to Columbia, South Carolina. It was called the Asia Man Records Tour. Do you know who was on that tour?
I mean, I'm going to guess AJJ and Lemuria.
AJJ Lemuria, Kepi Ghoulie. There's more. Let me pull it up. It was like a 5-band tour. Okay, full tour. The Queers were the headliners. Woof. That's a band who put out a lot of records on Asian Man Records that we just said, fuck them. We're not talking about the Queers on here.
I haven't listened to enough. It's fine.
I haven't, and I will not. He's too much of a Republican for me to enjoy. So, it was the Queers, Lemuria, Bomb the Music Industry, AJJ, and Kepi Ghoulie. That is a show that I wish I had seen.
Yeah, it's wild.
And it didn't come to Charlotte. It came to Wilmington, North Carolina. I thought it was a South Carolina show, but no. Wilmington at the Soapbox.
Who goes to Wilmington?
Somebody must have wanted a beach trip because it was in June. So they were probably like, you want to go to the beach? Yeah. They went from Nashville to Wilmington. They drove across the entire state of North Carolina.
That is such a long drive. Just Nashville to Western North Carolina is a long drive.
They had a day off, too, between. But you would have to have a day off because that's like a 12-hour drive, I bet. Because North Carolina's long. And Tennessee's kind of long. But.
And you have to go... I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it made more sense to just go through South Carolina. But I don't know if there's highways that go straight across enough. Because you would take 40 from Nashville. So that means you got to go up the entire length of Tennessee almost, come back down through North Carolina, because you got to go up to get to that gap where 40 cuts through. God, that's a long drive.
Yeah, they had the day they had the day between, but you would need that entire day just to drive because it is 10 hours because it's 5 hours to Nashville from my house and it's 5 hours to Wilmington from my house. So it's more like 4.5, but still. So it's a 10-hour drive that they just spent the whole day driving. Oh man. Wish I could have gone. I don't think I was driving 5 hours to go see this though, but okay. AJJ versus Lemuria. This one's a little easier to me, despite many of the other ones being kind of tough. The 3 AJJ records on Asian Man Records are their best records. They're my favorite. They mean a lot to me. Get Better means so much to me too. The first collection to a lesser degree, but I do love that comp. And I think it's just a case of those three AJJ records are more important to me than the one album by Lemuria. So I'm voting for AJJ.
Yeah, I would agree.
Wow, who could have seen it? Our final head-to-head is MU330 versus AJJ.
Well,
but our tiebreaker also had MU330 and AJJ as his final, so I feel a little vindicated. It's not just our taste; it's his too.
Yeah. Those are some great runs, though.
Yes, it's tough. It's
really hard to imagine very many other bands. That being said, we had some tough rounds, some tough eliminations. There were certainly bands that could have gone that far. It's like if Alkaline Trio had like one more record that could, on Asian Man, that could change the whole thing.
Yeah, like if From Here to Infirmary had come out on Asian Man, then yeah, I think that would have changed a lot, actually.
So, AJJ versus MU330.
Let's break it down. What we're talking about. We're talking about People, Can't Maintain, and Knife Man. We're also talking about the 2 comps, Candy Guns, Cigarettes, and Issue Problems, or it's a really long, annoying name. And Rompolation. So we have...
You keep calling it Candy Guns?
It's Candy Cigarettes, Cap Guns, and Issue Problems. I do. I keep calling it Candy Guns.
And other such something? I don't remember.
So we have 3 excellent EPs and 2 compilations. For MU330, we have Crab Rangoon, their self-titled, and Ultra Panic as their studio albums. We have their Christmas album and a live record. So we have 3 great LPs, a Christmas record, and a live record up against 3 LPs and 2 comps. So I'm just going to toss out the comps and the live and Christmas albums. So I'm really just going to focus on the 3 LPs that each band did. People, Can't Maintain, Knife Man, Crab Rangoon, MU330, Ultra Panic. There's one weak record, I think, out of these 6. And that's, to me, is the self-titled MU330.
Yeah, that's the
It's a
one
great
I was
record,
thinking.
but it's not their best record.
No.
So you could almost vote against... We could pick the albums. So you say, like, Can't Maintain versus Crab Rangoon. That's hard.
Tie.
I might... Huh?
Tie.
Tie.
Yeah.
Okay. Tie. Let's say that's a tie. Okay. Then Can't Maintain versus self-titled MU330. Can't Maintain's a pretty obvious winner on that one.
Yeah.
Knife Man versus Ultra Panic. Ultra Panic is a sneaky good record. You should look at the track list on that one. I know the Knife Man track listing much better.
Yeah.
Raw
It's
Fish, KKK
good.
Highway.
I just don't know enough of the songs well enough.
Yeah.
I think I would go Knife Man, but it's like a count out. It's a disqualification.
DQ win. yeah.
Title doesn't change hands.
People and Crab Rangoon had a time limit draw, 30-minute, an hour long Broadway. They did that one. Very handily beat them in the AJJ beat the self-titled, just in a very clean victory. Meanwhile, AJJ had to resort with some cheating method. Oh no, MU330 cheated and got disqualified for Ultra Panic. That's how that worked.
Yeah, but
Tough.
it's gonna go with AJJ for me. I think I have reached for those three AJJ records so many times in my life, and I continue to come back to them. Not as much as I did, but I can come back to them and enjoy them.
Yeah, I would say it was a soft burnout on those records for me. But really, it's more so like the output that they put out after that kind of like soured me on them a little more. Like, I don't love the later material nearly as much as the pre-name change, really. Well, I guess Christmas Island was still under Andrew Jackson Jihad, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It is not the fault of those three records that they
Right, that's true.
sound the way they do afterwards.
Yeah.
One of the, we've talked about AJJ in the past as being one of the most, how did we describe it?
Not sure. What are you referring to?
One of the best middle period bands.
Oh, yeah, where like the middle run is their best. I mean, People was like, very early.
So good.
Yeah, it's not so much of a middle run because People was like their second LP. So
yeah. All
right, I'll tell you. All right, I will be the tiebreaker on this one. I will go ahead and tell you that our mystery caller voted for MU330 in that final head-to-head. So it's up to me. And I think the math we did on that, comparing the three studio albums against each other, even if we throw in the two comps against the Christmas album and the live record, I'm going to listen to those comps over that. All right, this is tipping the scale then. I'm going to listen to those two comps before I'm going to listen to the live album and the Christmas record.
Yeah. The Christmas record you can only listen to once a year.
Yeah.
And you might not necessarily want to every year.
And the live album is a live album. There are AJJ live records, but they came out on other labels. Yeah, that tips it for me then. Counting the comps versus the live and Christmas record, I'm going with AJJ.
Yeah.
So AJJ are our victors in the Asian Man Records bracket, which feels a little weird because I still don't fully consider AJJ an Asian Man band, but they should because their three best records came out on the label. So it's just sonically not what they have done historically as a label, but yeah, here we are. That's where we landed. That was fun. That was much better than our wing it versions, I think. I did have someone ask if we were going to do the albums instead, and that could have been a completely different bracket if we'd done albums. We also would have included stuff, I think, that we didn't by these artists, because I don't think we would have picked any of those Lawrence Arms records. We probably would have picked something different, like a Kitty Cat Fan Club, or one of those other, or Hard Girls, or somebody like that. But there's enough bands on Asian Man Records, we could do a whole extra Asian Man Records bracket. That would be a weird one, because if we took all the big names off, it would be a lot of the small bands like Small Crush and Grumpster, newer bands, but maybe one day. But as of right now, that was good. That was fun. I really appreciate the suggestion and the help in voting from our good friend Justin there, the Madball Mystery Caller. I don't know if we've given that away. I think we gave it away. He came on the show and did the voice. Yeah. Brian from Wisconsin. And yeah. Was there a third character he tried? I feel like there was, and I don't remember what it was now. Brian and Johnny Three Toes were the consistent characters. And he's left voice messages on his own, but yeah. So yes, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you all for listening, and thank you for being here for part of all of the 350. If you've been there since the beginning, let us know. I don't think there is anyone, except for maybe Corey. But Corey actually doesn't listen to our show. He just comes on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've been there since the beginning, or you've maybe gone back and listened to everything, let us know. If that's the case, I need to figure out a way, and you're not a patron, I need to figure out a way to give you Patreon material for free for life. If you've been there and if you've listened, you can't lie and say you did. Oh man, maybe I shouldn't do that.
How do you prove that?
How do you prove it?
Show me the timestamps.
Prove it. Show me played to complete. Now you can do that too just by scrolling to the end of the episode and it says it's completed. So.
Yeah.
Impossible to know. Our brother might be the only one. And I don't think he's heard every episode.
No.
And I already gave him the the freebies, so he's good. Anyway, we appreciate you all. I have considered maybe every 10 episodes we do one of our Patreon gimmicks that we have since abandoned. So maybe in like episode 360, we do like a Master Punk Theater. And then episode 370, we do a Best Worst Over Under. We've talked about it. We'll have to see what we can do with that. I would like to try and do that because I don't want to abandon those ideas wholeheartedly because I do think they're fun. So we'll figure out a way to do that. And yeah, again, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. You can follow us everywhere online at PunkLottoPod. You can send us an email, punklottopod@gmail.com. Our voicemail line, 202-688-PUNK, where you can call and leave us a message, and we'll play it on the show. You can also email those voice notes and play those as well. And where do we follow you online, Dylan?
You can follow me online at Major Awards Band or Husker Dylan, depending on what kind of content you want from me. And I'll let you figure out what they are.
I don't know what to describe your original, your page. At least on your Twitter.
My Twitter?
Yeah. Your Instagram is like easier to, that one makes more sense. But
yeah. Yeah, my Twitter and my Blue Sky personal accounts are mostly shitposting.
Yeah. Shitposting, inner thoughts that have to escape your body in some way.
Yeah. It's valve pressure release kind of material. I need to say it or else I'm going to drive my car into a wall. I don't know, you know?
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for 350 episodes. And we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.